Welcome to the Golden Age of Cardboard podcast, where we remember a time when stacks of cards were held together with rubber bands and Mickey mantles were put in bike spokes. We hope you will enjoy and reminisce as you come along with us as we tell stories about the baseball cards from the Golden Age of Baseball. We will examine the state of the vintage baseball card market and talk to some of the greatest collectors in the hobby. You won't be hearing us talk about any chrome or shiny cards here. Now, to take you on this retrospective journey, here's your host, direct from the shallow end of the gene pool, my son, Mike Moynihan.
Yo and hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Golden Age of Cardboard podcast. We are into 2024, going strong, and I have to show this off. If you're not watching on video, I'm making the debut of my New York Knights jersey, and I won this actually from a good friend of mine, George. He's been on the podcast multiple times. Diamond Yard Sports Cards is his YouTube channel, and he is an Arizona Diamondbacks fan, and so when the Rangers were playing the Diamondbacks, we made a little friendly wager before the series, and I won, obviously, because the Rangers won. And this is what he sent me, and I had no idea he was sending me this. And I got it in the mail yesterday, and I was so excited because he wears it. He wears his a lot, and I get so jealous every time I see it. I'm like, God, I got to get one of those. I got to get one of those, and I never do. And he solved that problem for me. So George, thank you so much. And sorry your team lost, but not really sorry, because that means the Rangers won. So far this year, I've had the opportunity to talk to a bunch of different people, ranging from CEOs like Nat Turner to dealers like Craig, dealers and collectors, and Chris Sewell so far this year on this show, or at least over the last month or so. But there's one guy that if we're going to talk about kind of where the hobby is, where we think the hobby's going, I can have my opinion all day, but there's one guy whose opinion that I really care about hearing from, and he happens to be my guest today on the show, and that's Dr. Jim Beckett. Jim, how you doing?
Doing great, Mike.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Do you like my Roy Hobbs jersey?
I do.
What's your favorite baseball movie of all time? Do you have a favorite?
Oh, I don't think I have a favorite, but that's a good one. The Field of Dreams. There's I don't really like tear jerkers, but I like a great story. And
yeah,
42.
Like I like Major League a lot. It's comedy, right?
That's pretty much a comedy. Yeah.
Right. And Sandlot is fantastic. There's so many great baseball themed movies. The Natural,
yes,
of course, is one near and dear. I think it's a great story. I think it's very apropos for the period in which it's set. Right. You could actually imagine that happening.
And something like that sort of did happen. I mean, not all the dramatization, but there are elements of it that are pulled from history.
Sure, you got Eddie Waitkus being the inspiration for him getting shot and all that kind of stuff. Who else?
No, I'm just saying they can take artistic license. That's fine with me, but it's still the basic game of baseball that's built around, and that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is. So I mentioned in my intro, kind of getting the opinions of people based on where we are in the hobby, and yours is one I'm sure a lot of people would want to hear. As we go into 2024 here, this is your, how many years in the hobby? I don't even want to guess. A lot.
Yeah.
Decades and decades. Is anything different?
Well, first of all, it's not an opinion about the past.
Right.
You were there for a lot of it. I was there for a lot of it. And so there's kind of a factual record, a pictorial record of what the story was if you go back so many decades. What nobody knows, and where there really are opinions, are what's going to happen this next year and going forth. And that really is, everybody's entitled to an opinion, and we really don't know. Now, what you have and I have is that we can have a somewhat educated opinion based on what's happened in the past. But if you rely too much on, oh, that's never happened before, or, that can't happen because it's never happened before, you got to be careful how you evaluate the past, because sometimes the past is a prelude to some new thought, new approach.
For sure. I think we're seeing collectors have to, I think more collectors are shifting in this. I think it's a period of transition for a lot of collectors right now, trying to decide which direction they want to go in the hobby. What they don't realize, because they don't have the experience, is that they're going to do that 8 more times in the next decade or 20 years, right? They don't realize that you and I have been shifting
Well, no, I mean,
all
historically,
along.
I think there wasn't as much shifting if you go back through the decades, because there was a steady onward, cards either stayed the same or went up slightly each year. And so there was a lot more predictability. You didn't know that at the time, but
Right.
for the most part, people had their quests and they just would buy stuff and add to their collection, complete their sets and all that. But over the last few years, when it's up and down, and a lot of ups, but now some downs, all bets are off. And so people are moving from one category to another because they're looking for the next best, the next good thing or the next thing to hit. That I don't think that was done that much 30 years ago. It was like
That's a good point.
collected what you collected and you were on a quest. Now people are jumping around from quest to quest to be opportunistic that, hey, this is up extra, this is very expensive now, or the price has gone down. Now what am I going to do? Well, maybe I'll switch to soccer, or I'll do. A lot of people are moving to vintage baseball, but some people can move from vintage baseball to modern baseball.
Yeah.
It's there. There are no rules anymore, and the hobby's a lot broader than it used to be. There are a lot more options. Just like young people, there are way more options for the young person growing up now.
Do you think because of the younger people getting in the hobby, and I see a bunch of them, and I'm happy about that, by the way. I think it's a good thing for the long-term health of the hobby. But it feels like, and maybe we were this way, the attention spans are so much smaller. Um, I'm looking at it as a 50-year-old. I mean, I think differently now than I did then, but I don't remember how I thought back then, other than I wanted every Darryl Strawberry card I could find and get my hands on. I was a player collector, and that was a quest, like you said. Yeah, I had a quest, right? And I didn't buy a whole lot outside of that. I mean, I bought occasional things, but I was on a mission. That was my hobby. That was my passion, I guess, to lack of a better word.
Well, you had Daryl, but you also had Juan Gonzalez.
Yep.
Then you had Josh
I'm-
Hamilton. They're all, they're all sluggers.
yeah.
They all had a following, and they all had a little bit of a of a fall. Of a not a crash, but
Yeah, I get it.
Darryl Strawberry, I think, is doing better now, but he had some dark days. Josh Hamilton had some dark days. And Juan Gonzalez I think, really has never gotten the respect that he deserves.
Right. Speaking of which, you're a Rangers fan. Were you happy at the World Series victory
Yes,
finally?
very happy. I went to one playoff game, but no World Series games. But it was just great watching on TV. I was riveted. They were a team of destiny.
Yeah, they were really fun to watch. And most people that didn't watch them every day, like you and I had the opportunity to, or listen, or whatever we were doing, following the team on a daily basis is basically it. It
Yeah,
was,
and following the manager and thinking, you know what, this guy Bochy is making the right calls. He's getting the right pitchers in there. He's knowing when to stay with him. He's got the right lineup. He's believing in these young guys. He's believing in the old guys. It was somehow infectious that he had them believing that they were a team of destiny.
yeah, baseball is way more mental than I think people give it credit for. It's a grind, right? 162 game season and then playoffs, and this team is traveling, and Rangers especially were Seattle to Tampa to Baltimore. They didn't play a home game for like 2.5 weeks or something in the midst of their run. It's a mental just beat down, and that doesn't get a lot of respect, I think, from non-baseball fans. They don't understand it. Physically, of course, it's a beat down too, because you're playing every day versus once a week or whatever, like in other sports, or every few days. But watching this team was really great. Do you think, we had Bochy, you had Dusty Baker, these kind of old school managers.
Potentially both Hall of Famers. Potentially both Hall of Famers.
I think likely both Hall of Famers.
On the management side.
I think likely Bochy for sure. Now he's got 4 rings, right? I don't know how you keep him out, but I think that gives you some inspiration to go back and maybe revamp Beckett and go back and why don't you go back and take back over?
Like a hostile takeover? What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. Why not? I mean, it could bring you back. You still got a lot to contribute, I think, just like Boch and Dusty,
I'm available. I mean, I talk to the guys sometimes, but they're doing it the way they want to do it, and that's the blessing and the curse. I always have an opinion.
right?
So if they ask me for my opinion, I'll give it. But I have my own opinion. I don't think I can be bought and paid for. I just call it like I see it, and I'm hopeful this is a good year for the company, especially in grading. But there's a lot of other things they do that could use a boost as well.
For sure. I think you're enjoying the life you have now pretty good, though. So
I think I've got more podcast episodes now than anybody.
right, yeah, you are
Just kind of
prolific.
in there, and I had a battle with Cage and Andrew, and then they stopped. Now Cage is back, and I don't know if he gets to add to his count, but he's prolific as well. But what's been my secret is 15 minutes or less a day,
Yeah,
or now 3 times a week, and I'm enjoying it, and I can keep doing that. And you've got lots of different venues, but you took a break, and I
I
get
did.
it's good. What I don't like, I think breaks are good. Quitting is not. I mean, I have no problem with people that take a hiatus in this industry, but I don't like it when people leave and don't come back.
Right.
Because I believe once a collector, if you're really a true collector, you're always a true collector, and you can slow down, you can take a break, but you need to get back in the saddle. And
Yeah,
you
I had
did.
people.
You're re-energized now.
I am. I had people that were like, "Are you done?" I'm like, "No, no, 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 no. It's okay. It's all good. Like, is something wrong? Are you upset?" No, nothing. None of those things. I just needed a break from the podcast anyway. Um, there is some obligation that we feel as content creators to our audience, and I certainly feel that. And I know how many people that tell me they enjoy the show.
Sure.
They may be lying to me, but they at least tell me that. You're one of them? Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, I got to tell this story before we get too far in this episode and people turn us off. But there's a card behind you that I've seen in person. It's if you guys can see Dr. Beckett's wall, we've done a home and home. Dr. Beckett's been to my house, I've been over to his house. We've swapped stories, told lies, and showed cards and had fun doing that. And I was at
I didn't damage any of your cards, did I?
hopefully I didn't damage any of yours, but I came pretty darn close. I was looking at his cards, and he has the 49, 48, 49 leaf Jackie Robinson. And it's kind of high. You can see it's not right in front of you. And I had to reach for it. I had to reach up for it. And as I did, it somehow slipped out of my hand. And I watch it in slow motion falling down, cascading among the cards along the card wall. And ultimately, I catch it with the top of my foot so that it doesn't hit the floor with full force. And it lays on the ground, and I go to grab it, and I proceed to kick it across the floor. And I feel like, oh my gosh, Dr. Beckett's literally about to kill me. And then I think, okay, I hope Dr. Beckett kills me, because if I have to tell my wife I broke it, I bought it, that was going to be a harder conversation. I'd much rather Jim, I would have rather you killed me. But I have to tell you, you handled it with such amazing poise and grace. I was absolutely floored with just how cool you were about it. And I'm like,
If I were to say it's only cardboard, that wouldn't do it justice. But you've raised a good conspiracy concept here. Is that somebody could come over, pull a card off the wall that they're interested in, and on purpose drop it and say, "Oh, I've damaged it. I'll have to buy it from you now."
no. Well, luckily Beckett slabs are like little tanks. So
They do crack and chip on the corners. So, but and I have no carpet in there. I mean, it's
right. I didn't want to bring that, but yeah, I had broken the fall slightly with my foot
okay.
as I saw it coming, but did I really chip the corner of the
No,
slab?
I'm saying the corners do chip if you drop them from
Oh, yeah, I was like, I didn't,
distance.
because we looked at the card and I'm like, you're like, is it okay? Your reaction was so amazing. You looked at me and I picked up the card and you were like, is it okay? And I said, yeah, it looks fine. And you're like, okay, put it back and don't touch it. No, but it was,
Your
oh,
excuse.
it was crazy how nervous I was in that moment. And
No,
certainly,
I got 'em slabs so that people could actually, they're not touching the card, but I would be really nervous if it was not slabbed and it was just sitting
certainly,
there in a card saver or something. So I
mhm,
designed my wall that everything needs to be in a BGS slab so the holders are recessed to fit exactly that. But you can pop them out and you can drop them apparently. So
apparently. So,
I get some Jerry Rice gloves for my guests.
yeah, get some stickum.
Yeah, I
That
get some
won't
stick 'em.
that won't
Of
hurt
course,
the
that'd be
card.
stick 'em already all the way out the door, though. I better rethink that too.
A lot of my guests,
Not you.
as we've been talking about kind of this year, 2024, and all that, I've been curious about what people think about card shows, and do they think it's going to continue to morph into something different? Do they think the card show market is still strong? What say you about just card shows in general? What are your thoughts?
I put myself in Kyle Robertson's shoes, being the promoter here in Dallas, the show I go to the most, and it's tough to stay on top. He's got 6 shows every couple of months, and they're well done, but is each show that much different than the one before? Now, this show coming up, that's in a little while, he's got a bunch more Rangers, and he'll trade on that, and that'll be great for the people that are interested in that. But it's not an autograph show. It's really a card show.
Right.
But he doesn't have the sponsors aren't that much different than the ones before. The trade nights, all the elements are in place, and so it's a question of it's not like Disney World, but if you go to Disney World, how many times a year do you want to go to Disney World? Well, there's different lands there, I guess. There's Epcot and all these other kinds of things, but they're going to be an occasional show out of the 6 where one is not going to do as well as the one before it, and that
Yeah.
might be a trend of one, or it might be the market saying that we don't want to do. We're more interested in high school football and college football in the fall than we are going to a card show. I don't know, but I just think it's pretty ripe, um, and so I'm hoping every show will be good. But if it's not, again, and the other concern I have is that somebody's going to come in and say Dallas is such a great area. We're gonna in the off months that Kyle doesn't do. We're gonna put in a show and get some of that. And again, that I don't want saturation. I want a presence for the industry. I want visibility for the industry. It's kind of like 10xing the hobby for fanatics is that you don't want it overbaked. And so you want it to grow and to be a positive experience. But Kyle can't keep having record attendance each time. It,
Sure.
but all the shows, even the worst one I've been to was still a great show. But people are comparing, oh, it's down 10% since last time. Well, I don't know that it was even.
I I love your first of all, I love your Disneyland analogy, because when you think about it, the Magic Mountain or whatever ride, that's featured it never changes. You can go this year, next year, or the year after, whatever. The ride's essentially the same. And that's true of a show experience. I like having a show that I can go to every couple of months and make my own decision personally about whether or not I want to attend for whatever reason. And it's nice to have, like you said, a presence locally where that you can do that. There are plenty of people around the country that don't have any shows. As much as we think shows have, just exploded across the country, there's still plenty of areas that don't have anything. So we're at least blessed to have that. And I maybe I don't go to 6 like I would have a few years ago. Maybe I go to 3 this year instead of 6. That's still, and it's nice to have the opportunity, but that's still a lot of shows. And I don't think Kyle or Rob in Burbank or any of those places need to pizzazz it up in a way that makes it. You just don't. The attraction is the cards itself and the ability to have a card show. To me, that's what you do. I don't need a lot of bells and whistles and flair, right, with my card show. I just need a card show that I
Yeah,
can
but
walk.
Rob Veras, my good friend there, his challenge is he's covering the late summer and the and the winter, I guess. But somebody's liable to come into Anaheim or Ontario or Burbank, one of those areas, and say, you know what, there's nothing stopping me from doing the fall and the spring. and
Right.
and marketing and advertising and promoting in all the same places. And maybe I don't have as many dealers as Rob has, but it's still an opportunity for people to get their fix. And then who knows? Then it dilutes or maybe saturates the area. Again, it's good problems to have.
Sure.
But if I just think there ought to be a brand ought to be important, Mike. It is important in most industries, and Kyle has a brand, Rob has a brand, TriStar has a brand, and they say if it's a TriStar show or TriStar is going to be there, or uh, you know, whoever's standing behind it. If Kyle is standing behind it, then he's got a track record
Sure.
and he's working it hard. And somebody coming in at the last minute just because there's an opening there, I don't think people should stay away. But brand ought to be important. I know what I'm going to get when I go to the to the Waters Creek
Convention
Paul
Center. Yeah.
Robinson show. Yeah,
Yeah. He's earned it too.
he's earned it.
Um, Speaking of shows, I've had a lot of people over the last 3 months or so, especially it's ramped up quite a bit as we head into 2024, start asking me about Cleveland because the last Cleveland show was 18. So a lot of people are new to the hobby, didn't even know they did nationals in Cleveland. It's like this way back in the day in Cleveland. It wasn't that long ago, but long ago enough hobby timeline that there are plenty of new people in the hobby. And so I'm getting a lot of, hey, tell me about Cleveland. Tell me, what's it like and this and that. What are your recollections of the last few Cleveland shows that you can remember that you would pass on to people?
Well, it's an outlier venue because it's not like any. The building is different, the location is different, the proximity or lack thereof to the hotels is different. But it's still always been a good show. I'm just on the record of saying I think it'll be not as good as Chicago last year through no fault of Cleveland's. Now, I hope I'm wrong, but there are going to be less dealers there, so it's a smaller footprint. Now, that maybe that'll add to some enthusiasm, but I think people came out of the woodwork for the Chicago show, even
Yeah.
with all the extra square footage and extra tables and booths. It was crowded in every area of the building, and I think Cleveland will be equally crowded, but it's a smaller place and less dealers. Now, maybe that means the dealers will do 10% better because there's 10% less dealers there,
Right.
and
Less
that's a silver
competition.
lining. So less competition. I
I've
will be
been,
I will be there, but Chicago is so convenient. It's
yeah.
so hard to beat. It checks all the boxes, and Cleveland is to its credit, no credit of its own, but I mean, it's closer to the East Coast. And so you're going to get some people driving there, slightly different crowd. It'll be a great show. It'll be a great show.
Yeah. I've been to Cleveland in 14 and 18, the last 2 times they've had it there. And I had I loved Cleveland in terms of the show venue itself. Uh,
Well, you can't walk from the hotel.
Right.
you've got there's some logistical things you've got to be concerned about. You can't walk across the street to a restaurant for lunch. I mean, you're captive there. You're
That's
captive.
true. I hadn't thought about the food thing, but that makes a great point. There is nowhere to go eat around the IX Center, so you better come packing snacks this year.
Well, the outer perimeter, one side of it's got all those food court kind of things. They're not
Sure.
exotic, but and there's a bunch of tables there. So I've sat down with people and had impromptu burger or whatever they've got. It's been fun.
Yeah, that whole, I guess, I don't know which direction. When you walk in the main door, the left side, it's all those tables and all that. I remember what sticks out to me, memories from Cleveland, is the wide aisles. There's plenty of room to walk around. It's a good show floor, and now we won't have the Ferris wheel anymore, right? I think they took that out. So
I predict the aisles will be not as wide. I mean, I think the incentive, what John Brogy's team showed last year, that Joe Drellick, I think, noted with interest, is that putting in more tables is good.
Yeah.
And so when the previous Clevelands were not crammed, there was plenty of room there, but there was extra room. There was a walk-up area. You didn't walk. There wasn't Alan Rosen was not 15 in front of the front
Right.
gate there. You had to walk 100 feet or something to get to some of the. I think they're gonna cram a lot more booths in there.
Well, I'm hoping to get to talk to Joe Drellich. He and I've texted back and forth multiple times. He wants to come on the show. As we get closer to the National, my plan is to have him on and kind of because I have, again, fond memories of Cleveland, the show. Less, but I don't remember it like being so burdensome with hotels and stuff that it just pissed me off because
No, it's just a mile away. I mean, you got to get a shuttle or something like that. But
most of the hotels have shuttles to the IX Center from the lobby. You got to wait on one or whatever. But
on the half hour or something. But the other thing I haven't heard talked about is that the IX Center where the Cleveland show was going to be mothballed. It was either going to be destroyed. It was going to be decommissioned, and that's why it wasn't there for a while. Is because they were out of business. I think it was something either the city or it was not cash flowing or something. There was some problem with it. And so my hope is that when they bring it back, they'll bring it back with intentionality and purpose. That, hey, if we're going to bring this back, we're going to take out the Ferris wheel. We're going to refurbish it a little bit. Can't remember if are the bathrooms downstairs in that one?
No, same floor.
Okay, I guess which one has the bathrooms downstairs?
Baltimore, maybe.
Maybe. Anyway, well, okay. So anyway, my point is, I think they're rethinking their site, their venue, and thinking, it wasn't working as well as it could. And so I'm hoping that when we get in there, we're going to say, hey, this has been modernized, this has been refurbished, this has been reconfigured. The Ferris wheel was a landmark, was a monstrosity, but was it was a discontinuity in the middle of the show.
Yeah, literally in the middle of the, and you'd have to go, hey, I'm on this side of the Ferris wheel, or when you're talking to your buddies, which side of the Ferris wheel are you on? And that was always a fun landmark to have. I'm expecting the show to be very successful this year. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't. Chicago was such a just mania that there's just still a lot of hype surrounding that show. They built a wonderful, just like you said earlier about branding, right? Talk about a brand. The National is probably the brand of the hobby. If you were to say, man, they've built this over.
It is, but Cleveland has a little bit, playing to your strength, is a little bit of a vintage brand. Yeah. I mean, Cleveland is the city that has Strongsville, or it's actually a suburb, but in Strongsville, that is one of the premier. Well, it's probably the only and premier vintage card show that really has some level of requirement for display of vintage cards. And so Cleveland has a very strong vintage presence. So you may find that at this national, a stronger vintage group. And again, all that is good.
Well, I've mentioned before on the show, I'm going to Strongsville this April for the first time. Have you been to Strongsville before? And
I used to go every year, back because it was such it's so concentrated. And so it was an old school show. It was in an old Holiday Inn and in an old hotel, not even a giant ballroom, but everybody had 6-foot tables. People didn't have these islands and things like that. And they had their stuff out. There weren't. So it was. I don't know that it was clearly completely vintage in those days, but it was strongly vintage. The original partners that started it all were vintage collectors.
So this year they've moved it. The Holiday Inn is there, and that's where we're all staying, but they have an arena across the street, across the parking lot. Basically, they've moved the show there to allow for more tables, more people. So that's, to me, encouraging that they have a demand.
Yeah,
apparently is high enough to need that. So I'm excited to go this year for the first time and check that experience out. And I've become more of a guy of experiences, right? I want to go do things with the hobby, go to Burbank, go to Strongsville, I can go to a Dallas show whenever I want, every couple of months. And that's kind of become old habit.
Do you have some concern that, when you go to the Dallas show, it's every 10th table or so has something that will pique your interest? You go to Strongsville, every table is going to be worthy, pretty much every table is going to be worthy of you checking it out. And, back in the early days when I went, not everybody had showcased. They just stacks of cards and an array of interesting stuff that was old and eclectic. So I think you're going to have a great time there.
Oh, I'm stoked. And it's going to take, I've already mentally prepared myself to not be able to see everything and not be able to, I'm not going to see every card in the joint. You never do anyway, but you're right. In Dallas, it's easier to skip. You just skip a bunch of tables that you instantly look at and they don't appeal to your hobby interests. You're like, okay, that's easy. Move on. I don't need modern basketball or soccer or whatever it is. It'll be a challenge to get through it as best I can. I want to be social. There's a lot of people that I know that are going to Strongsville this year. It's kind of become the new Dallas, like Dallas was early after the pandemic, where everybody wanted to come to Dallas. The Strongsville show this year feels like the people that I, kind of hang with, the vintage crowd, they want to go to Strongsville this year. And we're kind of making it hey, everybody, let's go to Strongsville, and
well, you're talking about one side of the table, but on the other side of the table, the vendors, the dealers, every one of them, Mike, is a potential future friend for you because they're going to be kindred spirits. I mean, I suppose some of them will be younger, a bunch will be older, but it's the way it was in the old days. These were the veteran collectors that were selling their dupes. And so they were these weren't cards that they picked up they don't know anything about. No, these are lovingly handled, and some of them are in nice shape too. But these are dealers selling their trade and sales stock, and they're more consequently they can be way more open to trading,
right.
Which I would encourage you to consider that.
Okay, I gotta find some stuff to trade. I gotta, but that also brings a point. I love that they're going to be guys, like you said, kindred spirits. And so I'm going to be able to have great conversations with them.
Now wait a minute. They're not Texas kindred spirits. They're Ohio kindred spirits.
Okay.
So that don't play your Texas Ranger stuff on them. I just say they're old school. They were always old school baseball. I mean, Cleveland is really an original baseball town, and they're coming from, a lot of them around Ohio and other places too. But Ohio is a great state for older collections.
So I need to talk Nap Lash away and
That's going back maybe a little farther than you need to, but
How about Larry Doby and
Dobie's good. Yeah, Dobie's good.
do some Doby, Satchel Paige,
Yep.
Bob Lemon, Bob Feller.
Yep.
I can talk that talk.
54 Indians. Just channel your 54 Indians.
54, 49 Indians too.
One of the greatest seasons, one of the greatest regular seasons of all time.
Yeah. Where do you think we are? I don't know if you got to listen to my conversation with Nat Turner about.
I did.
Mainly, I didn't want it to be all about PSA because he gets that enough. I wanted him to feel comfortable and talk about. I just wanted him to be a guy, another collector, a fellow hobbyist.
You did a great job. Basically, I don't envy you, but I mean, you have a more longer form journalism, giving people a chance to. You don't have to heavily edit it. You let the people talk more than I do, I guess, because I'm trying to shoehorn it into 15 minutes. But
right,
that was great. That was great. He had ample time. You shared your thoughts. He shared his thoughts. He was candid. I thought you did an excellent job.
And he was quite candid. And we talked a lot. We talked way more off the air afterwards than we did even for the episode. He was incredibly generous with his time, which was amazing. And but it was because we found a connection. We liked the same kind of cards, and we're sitting there showing cards to each other after, just, hey, look at this. And of course I have the same card just in a much lower grade or whatever. But it's similar, it's still that's kindred spirits there too, as you were mentioning. As you listen to that, I think PSA has nowhere to go but continue to grow, honestly, because grading's not going anywhere overall. I think the overall pie is going to keep getting bigger, of which PSA will get their part, SGC, Beckett will get their parts, etc. Where do you see the grading world going? Is it going to shrink or grow or stay about the same? What's your opinion?
Well, not going to stay the same. It's going to shrink or grow, Mike. I mean, basically, I will say this: it's hard to imagine this right now, but it's not a simple matter to stay on top.
Okay.
Because then everybody's shooting for you, and so I think that what I love about Nat is that he's tuned in because he's a customer. He kind of understands the industry, and so I think they're in good hands. But every other grading company is setting their sights on. I want some of their pie. What PSA's done right is that they've expanded. If they figured out a way to as an industry volume leader to train and hire additional staff that can grade and populate other offices in remote locations, that's powerful, because I think that was a huge challenge for our old company when we were trying to add people, because I think our training took longer because I think it leads to more strict or more specified grading, but that's a challenge there with PSA, keeping it simple. There's no 9.5s.
Right.
It's just one less thing to worry about. And so next thing you know, they've got offices. They've got multiple offices opening up new markets in different continents. So
I think by being in multiple locations, not only can you handle more cards and increase your volume, whether it's here or overseas, but you also have a new pool of workers to choose from. And I think that's always the biggest challenge, is finding the right people for the job in a certain geographic area. If you pigeonhole yourself, you are stuck almost in it. You can only grow so big, right? Was that your biggest challenge, would you say?
Well, let me answer that in a different way. I don't think it was my challenge. Is my mindset. We built a big headquarters building, and I wanted to fill it up. And we actually built more than we needed. So I didn't think we'd need more people. And we never really did fill it up because the industry kind of peaked at that point. But I wanted to create the esprit de corps and the team orientation of all of our employees. We had a couple of work from home kind of situations, but mainly it was people coming in, being at the office, the camaraderie. We had a basketball court in the middle of our building and all that stuff. So I really felt like this was that was part of the esprit de corps. And so to have another location on the West Coast or the East Coast or in Asia was not something. I didn't really want to do it. I wanted to make it work so that the cards were coming into Dallas. I did an episode about kind of grading logistics, and I realized that the logistics of grading, I spent 99% of the time on making sure that our system and processes were airtight once the cards got in the building. Once they're in the building, there's lots of cameras, there's a lot of checks and balances. But until it gets into the building or after it leaves the building, some bad things could happen. And so that was my, not pessimism, but my probably realism that if we have an office in New Jersey or in Los Angeles or something, that's another opportunity for transit, and you can insure it. But people don't want an insurance settlement when you lose their Grail card.
Yeah, they want the card.
They want the card.
Yeah. Yep, I've had that happen more times than I wish to express out loud. I just want the card. It could be even a simple eBay sale. I buy something on eBay and it doesn't get to me for any number of reasons through the wonderful USPS or whatever, and they give me a refund, but I'm like, no, I wanted the card. I bought it because I wanted the card. That happens sadly occasionally, and that's just part of it. But I love that you built that, and I see your challenges with being in multiple locations and having to deal with the logistical. See,
that part of it, I was risk averse, and
yeah.
Nat Turner being a different generation and an entrepreneur to a much higher degree than what I was, saying this is a challenge that we can meet. This is part of scaling a business with a couple more zeros on it, or at least one more zero, let's say. But I mean, we had a sufficient, very nice business. I'm not complaining about that, but I didn't want to 10x my business.
Right.
And I didn't need to. I wanted to. I liked it that the employees all knew each other. There wasn't like somebody working some other place that we'd never met them or something. We'd have a holiday party or something, and everybody you knew the people's family and spouses and kids and stuff. So
to me, if Nat wants his vision to come to reality, to me, you got to silo the country. You got to take West Coast and Mid, and you go, all right, we have a Dallas office. They don't yet, but if they did, or a Kansas City office, somewhere in the middle of the country, Chicago, everybody that's, you basically draw little lines and say, everybody that's sending cards sends them here. You don't send them all to California and then have to ship them all over to these places. That doesn't make any logistical sense. But I have that in my business where if I'm turning in a piece of paperwork for a nationwide company, I look at the map and go, okay, I'm here. I have to send it to this office. That's where I send my paperwork because I'm located here. I go here. And I think that would take some acclimation within the hobby, but I think you could get there, or it could be automatic based on your return address, or wherever you're sending your cards from. It would automatically give you a printing label. You send them to here. If you're on the East Coast, you're sending them to Raleigh, North Carolina, or New Jersey, or wherever you're going to do that. And then you could scale it in a way. I do agree with you that shipping them to one location and then farming them out to the different, let's call them, satellite grading facilities would be perilous at a minimum.
Well, I'm not just saying that because I wasn't going to have them send it here and then we were going to send it somewhere. They would have sent it somewhere, but they would be sending it to a group that we had less oversight about.
Gotcha.
Or other things could go wrong. Whereas so yeah, I probably was a little risk averse. We were growing fast enough, so I wasn't thinking, oh, we're stagnant. We weren't stagnant. We were growing, but especially the grading was growing for the time I was there, and it was a wonderful business. But there are problems with it because people really care about their cards, and very minute, very small differences they could say, well, this is not the card I sent in. Well, they don't necessarily have a high res photo of when they sent it. Could have been damaged in the mail. I don't, again, if it would have been damaged when it was inside our building, we would have captured that, and
Right.
we had no reason to not report that.
Sure.
But
So overall,
that's on a different scale, and
right.
he's thinking really big, and it's not a winner take all business where only one grading company will be in business. But it is one of these things where where there's network effects, like there are in some businesses, is that you get kind of an exponential benefit because you have so many people like you want those slabs because there's so many of them. Then you could think, well, I mainly want to get PSA slabs because that's what I have, and enough people think that way that if you're the second or third or fourth place player, you've got to, even if you have your own directory, your own yeah
Registry. Yeah.
registry, you can't be you're not the primary registry. The universal registry, we'll see about that.
Well, you mentioned everybody kind of, if you're on top, people are coming after you. They want to take your business. They want to become number one. I try to rack my brain on what it would take for a grading company to overtake PSA. And I have a really hard time coming up with anything that is reasonable.
I don't.
You don't?
I
What would
don't.
it take?
I'm not going to say
Oh, okay.
because I want my whole company to do it, but I have an idea.
Okay.
So
Well,
nothing is ever in cement in this industry, even rookie cards. They're the definition of a rookie card and the extreme demand for a rookie card. Will that always be the case? Will the definition be in cement, or is it, nothing is completely calcified permanent.
yeah.
People could change, and there could be reasons, and I can come up with plausible scenarios how PSA could be. Of course, if I did it or somebody did it, PSA has enough of a war chest. If they saw it coming and they didn't realize it was a disruptive technology, they would buy it
Right.
and bring it in house. But so
Yeah, I'm
it's
I'm the only me and Rich Klein are the only fossils in this industry, right? There's no fossilization happening. Rich, love Rich, so I can have fun with Rich.
I'm
Um,
pretty close to a fossil too, and I like to do it, but I'm a little bit of a free thinker. But when push comes to shove, I'm pretty conservative in the way I do things, the way I've always done them. I try to do them with integrity, and but it's not, but I do come up with some crazy ideas sometimes.
so are you going? What's your show schedule this year? Are you going to do obviously the national and a few Dallas shows, or what else?
Probably do six of the Allen, Plano, Waters Creek, his big ones. I mean, if I have some kind of a family conflict, I won't make some of the days, or I guess I could be out of town. But generally, I don't go out of town those weekends because it's fun. It's fun.
Yeah,
I'm going to miss Sunday, this next one coming up, because we're I'm doing something with my wife, and so to miss a day is not the end of the world. But um, and then he does some Arlington ones or some, over in the mid cities. So I've seen you over there. Might do one or two of those, but I've just stayed for a couple hours one time. So, if I'm
sure.
driving, if I fly, I'm not gonna fly and stay a couple hours. In fact, what I got I wanted, I mentioned that in one of my, New Year's episodes, is that I'd like to add one more show to my show circuit. And this year, I'm not sure I will, but Toronto is near the top of the list. Burbank or Anaheim is or near the top of my list. I'm getting pitched for the Culture Collision, um, which would include a side trip to, uh, what is it, Sports Cards HQ, or
Yeah, yeah,
and Joe Davis's store. That I mean, that's the way I used to do show trips. I'd look for the big shops in the area, and in the old days, there'd be more than one. There'd be not just the big show, but there'd be some other shows. And so I hit the pavement. I hit the pavement.
And you made it an experience, just like
And it was fun. It was fun. And,
yeah,
the guys did it too. They had fun with it too. So it was traveling, it's like going to museums and stuff.
sure,
It's an experience each time. And the part that wasn't fun in the old days, I never really bought anything other than something for a type card to show in the almanac. But now, if I can sit down at a table and say, hey, there's some interesting cards here, I can buy some of them. And nobody's going to say, hey, you can't buy those.
right.
They're for sale, and I'm a buyer. And
I
it's
have
not
money.
huge bucks. I'm not cornering any market. I'm just buying things that are interesting to me, and it keeps me sharp.
So as we put a bow tie on this episode, do you have any final thoughts for collectors out there as they enter 2024?
Well, I mean, just keep an open mind. I mean, look for ways to enjoy the hobby, and that might mean business as usual, and it might mean, like you said, I think it's re-energized you to take a break, and you don't go to every Dallas show, and there's nothing wrong with that. Uh, and if I didn't go to a Dallas show, it wouldn't be the end of the world. Somebody would probably get some of the cards that I otherwise would have bought. On the other hand, they may still be there, some of them, and 2
Right,
months later. And so that's why I kind of gently indicate and let the dealers know if I've looked through a box. I said, don't put it in a different box, but I don't want to look through this box again because I've been through it.
right.
That is not fun, and I'm not completely. Rich Klein is more encyclopedic than I am, but if Rich goes through a box that he went through before, he knows it. For me, I probably know it. I think, wait, I've been through this before. Rich probably would know what the next card is coming up in the sequence.
That's crazy. Well, Jim, thank you so much for being on the show again. Always great to hear your thoughts and just talk cards with you. It never gets old, and I appreciate your friendship. And to everybody out there, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching as always. And we'll see you next week for another episode. Have a good one and keep collecting.